The cataclysm that shatters civilization is not merely a backdrop for power accumulation, but a mirror reflecting the fragility you've spent lifetimes denying. And true progression requires not optimizing your build against the end, but integrating the grief of collapse until survival becomes an act of sacred stewardship rather than selfish conquest. In the years of Apocalypse, Uranium Phoenix delivers a progression fantasy epic that transforms the apocalypse trope into a profound exploration of systemic failure and embodied resilience, proving that in worlds where magic returns through ruin, liberation isn't found in ascending above the wreckage, it's forged in the radical act of tending to what remains, when every instinct demands you transcend it. This isn't merely another stat-heavy saga with escalating threats. It's a psychologically precise narrative where every gained ability feels like both gift and burden. Consent to grow is negotiated through acknowledgement of loss rather than assumed entitlement. And mastery means honoring the cost of power when the system demands you forget what was sacrificed. From the first Ash-Layton narration, listeners are immersed in a landscape where entropy is pedagogy and presence is the only uncorrupted metric. Perfect for fans of emotionally complex progression fantasy and stories where male vulnerability defies genre expectations, this audiobook serves up atmospheric devastation, relentless emotional honesty, and a protagonist whose journey from desperate survivor to sovereign guardian resonates with anyone who's ever mistaken endurance for meaning. When former engineer Kalen Vance awakens to the system's arrival amid societal collapse, he expects tactical advantage, not to discover his technical expertise replicates the exact detachment that failed to prevent the apocalypse, and the system's adaptation bonus forces him to confront the grief he'd buried beneath years of performative competence. But as Kalen navigates fractured communities and escalating anomalies, he realizes this progression isn't about domination, it's about recalibration. Phoenix masterfully avoids reducing Kalen to optimized hero or the apocalypse to mere obstacle. Instead, they craft a narrative where advancement becomes therapeutic framework, where consent is renegotiated through boundary setting within systemic constraints, and where liberation requires seeing collapse as curriculum rather than catastrophe. The audiobook narration amplifies this emotional precision, capturing Kalen's disciplined focus fracturing into genuine receptivity, while secondary voices, survivors, system echoes, memories of the old world, shift subtly between transactional expectation and hidden solidarity, making every level up feel like both test and testimony. You don't just hear him progress, you feel the seismic shift of a man learning that some futures can only be built when you stop trying to outrun the past. What elevates the years of Apocalypse beyond typical progression fantasy fare is its nuanced portrayal of systemic collapse as somatic practice rather than abstract challenge. Kalen isn't merely grinding for stats, he's confronting how pre-apocalypse culture taught him to equate worth with utility, challenging the notion that safety requires emotional erasure. His relationships evolve through acts of radical reciprocity, sharing silences during resource rationing that bypass performance, establishing community protocols that protect both operational integrity and psychological safety, and defending survivors' right to grieve against factions who mistake mourning for inefficiency. Supporting characters add vital texture, fellow adapters whose strategies encode unprocessed trauma, elders whose wisdom carries intergenerational weight, even the ruined cities themselves rendered as living archives whose crumbling infrastructure absorbs decades of unspoken bargains. Every interaction reinforces the novel's core truth. In economies built on extraction, tenderness is technique, and presence is the only sustainable resource. Even the progression mechanics serve thematic depth, with skill trees mirroring emotional integration, and milestone achievements becoming metaphors for earned trust. For audiobook listeners, this production is an immersive sensory descent into reflective devastation. The narrator embodies Kalen's evolution with remarkable range, from clipped professionalism to trembling openness during breakthroughs, while supporting characters are distinguished through vocal textures that honor diverse expressions of resilience without caricature. Sound design enhances atmosphere without overwhelming immersion. Distant structural groans marking temporal rhythm, rain against makeshift shelters during vulnerable confessions, the hushed rustle of scavenged materials syncing with breath during moments of clarity, all anchor mythic stakes in tangible reality. Pacing mirrors the cadence of post-collapse recovery, deliberate during reflection and foundational bonding, then surging with urgency as external threats collide with internal awakenings. Whether you're commuting through stable landscapes or sitting in twilight solitude, the audiobook creates a portable sanctuary where slowness feels sacred and embodiment feels lifeline. It's storytelling as somatic validation, transforming passive listening into active participation in a journey where ascension isn't about rising above limits, but about rooting deeper within them. Ultimately, The Years of Apocalypse redefines progression fantasy by centering male emotional labor within systemic frameworks. It satisfies genre cravings for satisfying advancement and high-stakes tension, while delivering substantive commentary on ecological grief, identity formation, and the radical act of trusting your whole self when systems demand fragmentation. No prior series knowledge is needed. It stands confidently as a complete emotional odyssey. If you've ever wondered whether strength can coexist with softness, or if true mastery requires embracing what others fear, this audiobook will affirm that sometimes the most powerful act is simply choosing to remain.
Press play, step into the ruins, and prepare to believe that even in landscapes shaped by ending, hearts still find ways to begin. Your next favorite progression fantasy isn't waiting in flawless builds. It's waiting in the brave, trembling choice to specialize